Hello, and welcome to the Southern Bible Thumper channel. For this upload, we will be reading 1 Samuel chapter 14, and just a heads up, this will be 52 verses. I anticipate this will take around 8 minutes. Now it came to pass upon a day that Johnathan, the son of Saul, said unto the young man that bare his armor, Come and let us go over to the Philistines' garrison that is on the other side. But he told not his father. And Saul tarried in the uttermost part of Gibeah under a pomegranate tree, which is in Migron, and the people that were with him were about 600 men. And Ahiah, the son of Achitub, Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, the Lord's priest in Shiloh, wearing an ephod. And the people knew not that Johnathan was gone. And between the passages by which Johnathan sought to go over unto the Philistines' garrison, there was a sharp rock on the one side, and a sharp rock on the other side. And the name of the one was Bozez, and the name of the other Sinai. The forefront of the one was situate northward over against Michmash, and the other southward over against Gibeah. And Johnathan said to the young man that bare his armor, Come and let us go over unto the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will work for us, for there is no restraint to the Lord to save by many or by few. And his armor bearer said unto him, Do all that is in thine heart. Turn thee, behold, I am with thee according to thy heart. Then said Johnathan, Behold, we will pass over unto these men, and we will discover ourselves unto them. If they say thus unto us, Tarry until we come to you, then we will stand still in our place, and will not go up unto them. But if they say thus, Come up unto us, then we will go up, for the Lord hath delivered them into our hand, and this shall be a sign unto us. And both of them discovered themselves unto the garrison of the Philistines. And the Philistines said, Behold, the Hebrews come forth out of the holes where they had hid themselves. And the men of garrison answered Johnathan and his armor bearer, and said, Come up to us, and we will shew you a thing. And Johnathan said unto his armor bearer, Come up after me, for the Lord hath delivered them into the hand of Israel. And Johnathan climbed up upon his hands and upon his feet, and his armor bearer after him. And they fell before Johnathan, and his armor bearer slew after him. And that first slaughter which Johnathan and his armor bearer made was about 20 men, within, as it were, an half acre of land, which a yoke of oxen might plow. And there was trembling in the host, in the field, and among all the people, the garrison and the spoilers, they also trembled, and the earth quaked. So it was a very great trembling. And the watchmen of Saul and Gibeah of Benjamin looked, and behold, the multitude melted away, and they went on beating down one another. Then Saul said unto the people that were with him, Number now, and see who is gone from us. And when they had numbered, behold, Johnathan and his armor bearer were not there. And Saul said unto Ahiah, Bring hither the ark of God. For the ark of God was at that time with the children of Israel. And it came to pass, while Saul talked unto the priest, that the noise that was in the host of the Philistines went on and increased. And Saul said unto the priest, Withdraw thine hand. And Saul and all the people that were with him assembled themselves, and they came to the battle. And behold, every man's sword was against his fellow, and there was a very great discomfiture. Moreover, the Hebrews that were with the Philistines before that time, which went up with them into the camp from the country round about, even they also turned to be with the Israelites that were with Saul and Johnathan. Likewise, all the men of Israel, which had hid themselves in Mount Ephraim, when they heard that the Philistines fled, even they also followed hard after them in the battle. So the Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle passed over unto Beth-aven. And the men of Israel were distressed that day, for Saul had adjured the people, saying, Cursed be the man that eateth any food until evening, that I may be avenged on mine enemies. So none of the people tasted any food. And all they of the land came to a wood, and there was honey upon the ground. And when the people were come into the wood, behold, the honey dropped, but no man put his hand to his mouth, for the people feared the oath. But Johnathan heard not when his father charged the people with the oath. Wherefore he put forth the end of the rod that was in his hand, and dipped it in an honeycomb, and put his hand to his mouth, and his eyes were enlightened. Then answered one of the people, and said, Thy father straitly charged the people with an oath, saying, Cursed be the man that eateth any food this day. And the people were faint. Then said Johnathan, My father hath troubled the land. See, I pray you, how mine eyes have been enlightened because I tasted a little of this honey. How much more, if haply the people had eaten freely today of the spoil of their enemies which they found, for had there not been now a much greater slaughter among the Philistines? And they smote the Philistines that day from Michmash to Ajalon, and the people were very faint. And the people flew upon the spoil and took sheep and oxen and calves and slew them on the ground, and the people did eat them with the blood. Then they told Saul, saying, Behold, the people sin against the Lord, in that they eat with the blood. And he said, Ye have transgressed. Roll a great stone unto me this day. And Saul said, Disperse yourselves among the people, and say unto them, Bring me hither every man his ox, and every man his sheep, and slay them here, and eat, and sin not against the Lord in eating with the blood. And all the people brought every man his ox with him that night, and slew them there. And Saul built an altar unto the Lord. The same was the first altar that he built unto the Lord. And Saul said, Let us go down after the Philistines by night, and spoil them until the morning light, and let us not leave a man of them. And they said, Do whatsoever seemeth good unto thee. Then said the priest, Let us draw near hither unto God. And Saul asked counsel of God, Shall I go down after the Philistines? Wilt thou deliver them into the hand of Israel? But he answered him not that day. And Saul said, Draw ye near hither, all the chief of the people, and know and see wherein this sin hath been this day. For as the Lord liveth, which saveth Israel, though it be in Johnathan my son, he shall surely die. But there was not a man among all the people that answered him. Then said he unto all Israel, Be ye on one side, and I and Johnathan my son will be on the other side. And the people said unto Saul, Do what seemeth good unto thee. Therefore Saul said unto the Lord God of Israel, Give a perfect lot. And Saul and Johnathan were taken, but the people escaped. And Saul said, Cast lots between me and Johnathan my son. Johnathan was taken. Then Saul said to Johnathan, Tell me what thou hast done. And Johnathan told him, and said, I did but taste a little honey with the end of the rod that was in mine hand, and lo, I must die. And Saul answered, God do so and more also, for thou shalt surely die, Johnathan. And the people said unto Saul, Shall Johnathan die, who hath wrought this great salvation in Israel? God forbid, as the Lord liveth, there shall not one hair of his head fall to the ground, for he hath wrought with God this day. So the people rescued Johnathan that he died not. Then Saul went up from following the Philistines, and the Philistines went to their own place. So Saul took the kingdom over Israel and fought against all his enemies on every side, against Moab, and against the children of Ammon, and against Edom, and against the kings of Zobah, and against the Philistines. And whithersoever he turned himself, he vexed them. And he gathered in hosts, and smote the Amalekites, and delivered Israel out of the hands of them that spoiled them. Now the sons of Saul were Johnathan, and Ishui, and Melchishua. And the names of his two daughters were these: the name of the firstborn, Merab, and the name of the younger, Michal. And the name of Saul's wife was Ahinoam, the daughter of Ahimaaz. And the name of the captain of his host was Abner, the son of Ner, Saul's uncle. And Kish was the father of Saul, and Ner, the father of Abner, was the son of Abiel. And there was sore war against the Philistines all the days of Saul. And when Saul saw any strong man or any valiant man, he took him unto him. Summarizing 1 Samuel chapter 14. 1 Samuel chapter 8 is when the story of Saul starts. In that chapter, Israel demands a king. In chapter 9, Saul is chosen. In chapter 10, Saul is anointed in a ceremony in front of all of Israel. Chapter 11, Saul leads Israel to victory, earning the confidence of the people. Chapter 12, Samuel, who is the current judge, prophet, and leader of Israel, gives Israel a chance to voice any grievances with his leadership as he's about to transition to give Saul the power. Chapter 13, Johnathan, Saul's son, attacks a Philistine military base. We learn more about that dynamic in chapter 13. Israel has no blacksmith, meaning they have no weapons and they have no one who can repair or make weapons for them. We learn that under King Saul's leadership, Israel has to pay the Philistines to sharpen the tools that they need for gardening or for herding animals. The only people in Israel that have weapons are King Saul and his son Johnathan. Jonathan and his assistant sneak away to successfully attack the Philistines again. This victory, led by King Saul's son, inspires the Hebrews that hid in chapter 13 and the other Hebrews that joined the Philistine army to assemble with Israel under Saul's leadership. This victory was a success not led by King Saul, and he commands Israel to pursue the Philistines until there's nothing left. Israel credits Jonathan with victory over the Philistines. In verse 47, King Saul fights against the enemy on all sides. In verse 48, getting credit for smiting the Amalekites. In verses 1 through 15, Jonathan and his servant confronts the Philistines alone without telling King Saul. They slaughter 20 men. In verses 16 through 23, Saul led a successful attack against the Philistines. The Hebrews that joined the Philistine army returned to Saul's army. The Hebrews that hid in chapter 13 when Jonathan attacked the Philistines the first time, the Hebrews that hid in chapter 13 even returned to join the Israelites under Saul's leadership. In verses 24 through 35, Saul decides to pursue the Philistines even though Israel had been successful over them. He commands Israel not to eat. Jonathan, not hearing the command, eats honey as they're pursuing the Philistines. When Israel is finally allowed to eat in verse 32, they slaughtered the animals and ate the blood, violating the commandment from God in Leviticus 13, verse 7. In Leviticus chapter 3, verse 17. They weren't supposed to eat blood. Specific command in Leviticus from God. Saul commands Israel to eat together and to follow the command to avoid eating animal blood. Saul builds an altar. In verses 36 through 45, Saul decides that he wants to continue pursuing the Philistines until there's nothing left. Israel agrees to assist. The priest wants Saul to get close to God or to draw near. In verse 37, Saul asks God if Israel will be successful against the Philistines, and God doesn't answer. He's assuming that something must have happened among the Israelites to cause God to not communicate with them anymore. So now he goes, Israel, who sinned? Just let me know. And then he says, whoever did it will pay, even if it's Jonathan, his own son. In verses 40 through 41, Saul casts lots to help determine who caused God to stop talking to them. So, casting lots, we saw this in, I don't have it up here now. In Joshua chapter 18, there were 7 tribes who had not received or taken their inheritance. So Joshua cast lots to determine who would be the first tribe to go and conquer the territory. We see that again here. When you type in casting lots, you'll see things like this. This was a lot like casting dice or, throwing dice. So again, another practice that comes from the Bible, throwing dice to determine an outcome. Saul finds that Jonathan was guilty. And Jonathan admitted that he ate after Saul gave the command to not eat. Saul decides that Jonathan must die, but Israel protests, citing Jonathan's victory in attacking the Philistines. Saul decides to stop pursuing the Philistines in verse 46. Both the Philistines and Israel return home. Israel went to war many times, smiting the Amalekites. That was a victory that was credited to King Saul, the Amalekites. Verses 49 through 52. Saul's 3 sons, 2 daughters, father, and wife are named. His army captain is also named. In verse 52, Saul fought the Philistines all his life, enlisting every capable man to help. Highlights. In 1 Samuel chapter 13, we learn at the end that the Philistines don't have any weapons. They have to go to the Philistines to sharpen any of the tools that they have for gardening or for hurting animals. But Jonathan was so courageous, even without weapons. Here in verse 2, Jonathan decided to take 1,000 men and attack the Philistines. So in chapter 13, after attacking, Saul assembled Israel, and the Philistines assembled as well. Israel was scared, and they hid in caves, in holes, and in rocks, and in tombs. Some of the Hebrews crossed. All the people followed him trembling. So Saul went to make an offering. He's supposed to wait for Samuel. Samuel didn't come, so he made it himself because he was losing the faith of the people. The people were scattering. When we get to verse 16 or 15, Saul had 600 men, when at the beginning he had thousands of men, 3,000 men. In contrast, when we look at how his son handled things and the spirit that his son had, he didn't tell anyone. He went to attack again for a second time. Again, this time he has even less people. It's just him and his assistant. They have no weapons, or he's the only one with a weapon, and they can't have that many because they don't have a blacksmith. And what makes this so special is he says, the Lord will work for us. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving by many or by few. So he had complete faith, and it was just him and his armor bearer. He didn't tell anyone. When we look at verse 15, there was a panic in the camp. Johnathan and his assistant killed 20 men. Saul's people saw that the multitude of the Philistines, or the crowd, was starting to thin out. So Saul took a census and saw that his son wasn't there. He also says, bring the ark of God. And in the previous chapter, we saw him making an offering because he was losing the faith of the people. Samuel wasn't coming. We also saw in 1 Samuel chapter 4, when the Israelites were losing the war to the Philistines, they went and got the Ark of the Covenant, and the Philistines beat them and took the Ark. So this seems like another reaction out of fear. But as Saul was talking, he was making this request to get the Ark. He decided, you know what, don't even worry about it, because the Philistines is they're starting to look like they're losing off of Johnathan and his assistant, with no weapons, no men, no weapons. This was such an inspirational victory, led by his son, that the Hebrews that hid in the previous chapter, the Hebrews that had joined the Philistine army, decided to realign with Israel under Saul's leadership. And in verse 23, we see that the Lord saved Israel. So they were victorious after this. After Jonathan's courageous attack on the Philistines again, they were courageous over 2 men. After this, we see Saul making an oath: cursed be the man who eats food until I am avenged on my enemies. This to me sounds like King Saul is salty. His son has more courage than he does, and he's supposed to be the king. His son has no fear, even though he doesn't have enough people, enough weapons. He's still willing to attack the Philistines, and he inspired victory and commanded respect. So much so that even when he was found guilty in verse 45, the people credited Johnathan for the victory. The next highlight that I wanted to just go over is, why did God stop talking to Saul, or what happened there? We see in verse 24 that not God, after after Jonathan was courageous in inspiring, you know, allegiance from the other Hebrews that hid, Saul wanted to it just kind of seems like Saul maybe wanted to get his own name up, you know, get some sort of victory under his own belt, because now he's telling people you can't eat until he's avenged. He still wanted to he still wanted to chase the Philistines after they won. So this just kind of seems like this is an ego thing. Jonathan didn't hear his father. But one thing that I noticed is in verse 26, 27, and 28, the word oath was used. So an oath is like a solemn agreement. It's a very serious agreement, a very serious promise. When Jonathan is notified that they weren't supposed to be eating, he just said, like, I mean, I feel much better after eating. He's not even sorry. And he's like, how much better would our success have been if we were able to eat? After that, Saul asked God. I mean, this is also after the Israelites ate the animals with the blood, which is a violation of the command that God gave in Leviticus 3. But Saul did correct it and built an altar. But when Saul asked after this, we learned that in 43 that the guilty thing that happened was that Saul, or that Jonathan, had eaten honey when you weren't supposed to. So I'm just wondering if the word oath, if because it was such a serious command, and then Jonathan just sort of had a flippant attitude about it, like, yeah, well, I feel great after eating that. Uh, and he didn't tell his dad. Seems seems like he's a little bit cocky. Well, that's all I have for First Samuel chapter 14. I tried my best to condense it, but I was a bit intimidated by how long this was, and also because I have not been adhering to everything God wanted me to do. He's told me to get off social media multiple times, even through social media itself, and I have not. So if I keep loading my brain with crap from the internet, I'm not going to be able to get through this. So I just need to obey and get through it. Thank you for clicking on the video. I love you. Have a wonderful day.